than that. Eric Weissmann from Cintrifuse. This is how to find me socially, but I just want to take you through a real great introduction from Peg from how we fit together as an ecosystem. It's here together, so bear with me if there's some repetition. But I do want to go over who we are, why we were formed, what we do, some results that we've had, some real recent results, that some of them as recent as this week, and then go into some highlights for in the near-term future. But here's a partnership set up similarly to Cincy Tech in that there is state money, there's private dollars from big co's, and there is city money involved in it as well. But our goal is to drive the next phase of growth for the region. And really when you look at how we were formed, it was the city leaders coming together and those big co-leaders, the Cincinnati Business Committee. Everybody knows who the CBC is, so I can drop that acronym. We use so many acronyms in this, so sometimes it just go over people's head, but I think this crowd will know what the CBC is. So the CBC and the city leaders knew that growth for the region was not going to come from big co's alone. And when you think about it, not to pick on them, but let's just say Great American Insurance, they get rid of as many people a year as they bring on. So there's kind of that treading water. How are we as a region going to grow? What does that growth look like? So Cintrifuse was formed. These are the architects. These are members of the CBC as well as other people in the ecosystem who put real money into supporting Cintrifuse and creating this public-private partnership similarly to Cincy Tech, matched by the state of Ohio, dollar for dollar. And it's really thanks to that creative vehicle that we, Ohio, and we, the Midwest, are able to compete with not only other cities within our region, but cities on the coast as well. No one has a partnership quite like this. So we're building a tech-based economy. That's our mission here, is to build a tech-based economy in Cincinnati, a sustainable tech-based economy that will carry the region forward. Our goal is to be the premier destination for startups and innovation in the Midwest. And there's some qualifying words there, the Midwest. We're not trying to be the next Silicon Valley. And I think that's another aspirational thing that comes out a lot, is that when you look at the charts and you look at the funds and the amount of funding events that happen on the coast, Silicon Valley is literally another world. It is literally off the charts, and everybody else is way down the line. So we don't want to try to be like them, but we do want to consciously look at our regional set of what's going on in Dayton, what's going on in Chattanooga, what's going on in Indianapolis, what's going on in Detroit. Chicago is aspirational. They have a lot of great institutions up there that support entrepreneurs and fund entrepreneurs, but they also have about 5 times as many people as we do. So we're not foolish enough to think we're going to pick people off from there, but we do want to go and grow in those kind of concentric circles outside of Cincinnati. And the strategy to how we'll do that is by building an active network. And really, active is the primary word there. There's a lot of other ecosystems in existence around the nation and in other countries. Israel has a very profound one. But you see that a lot of investments come and that they're not, those investors aren't active, they aren't actively involved. But for our network that we're setting up between the universities that supply a pipeline of talent as well as a pipeline of ideas, Peg went through some of those from a UC standpoint, they're very involved. The big co's are very involved, not just in the dollar standpoint, but in pilots. We want them to be working with startups, maybe acquiring them, but really working with startups on projects. And then we've got investors in startups, and that's really the central piece of this. We're built around entrepreneurs in the end. So that's just a look at our active network. But the 3 assets of Cintrifuse and what we were built to kind of create, we operate a building, which is called Union Hall. It's on Vine Street, right across from the Mercer Garage, right smack dab in the middle of OTR. It's 38,000 square feet of space. We've got about 100 people that come in there day in and day out. It's also home to Cincy Tech and the Brandery. But there was no kind of belly button for the ecosystem. There was no one thing that you could touch. Where did the entrepreneurs hang out? And what we found from a study of other ecosystems is we need that hub. We need that hub of innovation, that hive of activity where things are happening all the time. That's where the meetups will happen. That's where investors can come and hold meetings. So Union Hall was created. I'll explain a little bit about that later. We created a syndicate fund there was a study that was done that there wasn't enough dollars from the outside. For a city of our size, we should be getting more attention from some of these coastal ecosystems and coastal VCs. So we created a syndicate fund, and I'll explain what that is, but that's a second asset of Cintrifuse. And then the last are our people programs that we provide that help entrepreneurs get to the next lily pad. We're not a direct funder. We don't fund directly like Cincy does, so it's a big differentiator. But we want to help you get where you need, whether you need help on your PowerPoint, or whether maybe you need introductions to a Series A or investor, or maybe you need a part-time CFO. It's whatever you need on your journey. So when you look at economy, and to keep that vernacular for a second, there's always a supply side and a demand side. And in our case, the supply side comes from startups, and the demand side comes from big cos. We want to help those big cos become more innovative by working with startups. So we're not a consultancy like Accenture or like EY. EY is a founding partner of Cintrifuse. We don't do what they do, but we want to help these big cos become more innovative by working with startups. That's really the differentiator between Cintrifuse and the rest of America, and that's the difference between Cincinnati and the rest of these ecosystems. No one has the concentration of big cos that we do and the engaged amount of big cos that we do. So when you talk about the demand side of our economy, those big cos, you look at it in two different ways. There's one from the outside in, taking innovation from the outside and implanting that inside the organization. And the other one is inside out. So taking ideas that may be locked inside of Humana, for instance, and we'll go through a case study in a second, of how they have some sticky problems they weren't able to fix on their own. So we look to the outside to solve those by working from within. And then from the inside out, or I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, the Customer Connections program, that's introducing startups to big cos with specific innovation brief problems, not just they want to be more innovative, or I like to say that, what's keeping you up at night? What are some of these sticky problems? I want more customers is not a solvable problem. We ask them to create innovation briefs. We put some events around that. But these are the two types of ways that we look at the demand side of our economy. And when you look at the engagement continuum of how we want what we call innovation champions, these are employees at these big cos, we want them to get involved. Obviously, we want everything to end with a pilot. Hopefully there's some money exchange between startup and big co, but we're not so optimistic to think that everything's going to end in a paid contract. But we want you to get engaged. We want you to become part of this ecosystem, to figure out and attend some of these seminars that we're putting on, and hopefully work with a startup. Maybe it's just from a mentoring standpoint or a subject matter expert standpoint, and hopefully those all lead to a pilot. We have an entity called Spry Labs, which is that inside-out setup where we run these big corporations through design sprints, taking the Google mentality of lean startup, of working things fast, of iterating, and just, I like to say it gets us to a go, no-go decision quicker. Sometimes, in the Humana case, they were toiling away for a year and a half, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and for just tens of thousands of dollars, we were able to get them to a decision a lot quicker and a lot more actionable. So when you look at the supply side of our economy, what does that look like? So I like to think of it in three different chunks. One, you've got what we call Startup Cincy. That is, think of that as the 275 loop. Startups that are in our soil. These are coming from funds from portfolio that Cincy has invested in, from brandery companies. Ocean is the faith-based accelerator right up the road in Oakley, having their demo day next week. That's a little plug for them. But from those accelerators, and also if you didn't get accepted to an accelerator and you didn't want to take Cincy money, or you didn't want to, and maybe you didn't get into an accelerator, you're still a startup. We count you as part of our census. So those are in our supply side, as well as our portfolio funds. So right now we have made 15 investments out of that syndicate fund into 13 different managers. Those funds are dispersed throughout the United States. There are 270 startups in those funds. And then that next circle outside of that are the funds that we haven't invested in. that we passed on for whatever reason, or they just happen to be in our orbit. So those are the ones that we have access to, that we're keeping track of, that we want to patch together with either big cos or that they need some other sort of investment. So that's the supply side. There's two ways that we touch those. One is on the member programming side of things, where we have events that are geared towards whether you just need to get that advice from a VC that's in the middle of the country, John Fine, who came from Kansas City to just kind of talk to some of our startups and really have that what we called group therapy, which was just an open forum to kind of share things and share problems, and he would share his advice in a very frank and open manner. Then on the subject matter expert on demand portion, the SME on demand, where that fits in is, again, to get you unstuck from that little period that you need, whether it's just to get some advice on your balance sheet, or maybe it's an engagement that you need to have ongoing from a paid standpoint with an advisor who's a specialist in that area. So this syndicate fund, I want to end with the syndicate fund on the three things that Cintrifuse does. The syndicate fund is the strategy that brings this all together. This is the reason, this is the theme of our story. Without the syndicate fund at the center, we wouldn't have the volume that we need in this ecosystem. We wouldn't have the attraction from outside capital that is bringing in needed dollars. And there's some pretty exciting things that are going to be released in the next couple weeks as far as funding events go. But it's because of that fund, and that it's a $57 million pot of money. Our syndicate fund is made up of 16 LPs, or limited partners, that have invested in that fund. And then we take and disperse that money. These dots represent all of those, the nodes in our ecosystem. The bigger the dot, those are the investments that we've made into those VCs in various parts of the country. And then the other gray dots are funds that we haven't invested in, but we have a good relationship with. So right now, it's pretty early on a syndicate fund to declare victory. This is going to take about 10 to 15 years to get back into that, till we get to start to show a true ROI. But right now, it's about 1.2 on the ROI factor of the dollars coming back in. But we focus on this regional economic multiplier, a dollar out versus a dollar into the ecosystem. And we have been able to positively affect 97, almost $100 million of money that's come back into the ecosystem that is invested into startups here in Cincinnati from the activity of the fund. So this is our clubhouse. This is Union Hall. Has anyone been down to Union Hall? Get a chance to? Fair amount, that's great. 4 floors above ground, 2 below ground. Anybody been to the sub-basement? This is official invitation. There's a lagering tunnel underneath the basement. I call it looks like Hogwarts. The building just keeps opening up as you go in. There's a beer hall, a giant ceiling to it. It's a special place, and it's really neat from the history. It's a 150-year-old building, built sometime between 1850 and 1855. We don't really know exactly when, but to have it be part of this growth of the neighborhood and of what's going on in not just the Over-the-Rhine district, but all of greater Cincinnati, or downtown specifically, is pretty magical. So, so far our process against our goals of attracting startups here, we do a fairly good job at a census. We're going to try to do a better job this year of what stages are everyone in, what's the money needed, what's the money that they have, and then compare ourselves to some of our peers. We've had over 200 VCs come to us, looking for us to invest in them. And like I said, we've made 15 investments through 12 managers, and those are some of the stats there. Then just, from the pilots, is the point of this slide is we've had over 60 pilots in the time that we've been in existence, pairing big cos with startups in paid contracts. That just doesn't happen. It's a pretty ambitious goal for us to look at paid pilots. Everybody else that's in this type of business from a big startup innovation looks at engagement, and we're really looking at signed contracts, really where the rubber meets the road. Spry Labs, I talked a little bit about that, and right now the focus is on digital health. We've got a great ecosystem for that with the healthcare providers and with the research institutions. The focus right now is on digital health, but there's talk that because of the financial technology, the insurance industry, the fintech type of stuff that we have here, that maybe finance would be the next place we go from that Spry Labs. But right now, the focus is on health. As far as the talent pipeline goes, we've got relationships with all 7, there's more, but the 7 universities, really 4 main ones, Miami, UC, NKU, and Xavier, that are very engaged in the startup ecosystem. But that's the pipeline that we want to grab a hold of. And it starts before that, right, with Inter-Alliance. And we just met yesterday with Junior Achievement. So they're maybe even going further and further down the pipeline. But then don't forget about these expatriates, these people that work at big co's right now, that need to feel confident that they can step out of that cube world and into the startup world, and we're seeing that happen. And then there's Startup Cincy. This is a brand that lay dormant for years. It was kind of a shorthand way of the ecosystem to be able to talk to each other, just via social media. And then, for a couple of years, it just lay dormant. Well, we put the paddles back on the patient, woke it up, and said, let's all use this as a common denominator that really joins us all. So whether you're a big co, whether you're a startup, whether you're an investor, whether you're just a fan clapping on the side of the street as a parade goes by, you're part of Startup Cincy. And that's going to culminate this year in an event we're doing in October, Startup Week. There's about 100 of those that happen throughout the country. I'm proud to say that we will now be one of those cities that's having a Startup Week. Hopefully we'll bring about 5,000 people to town for this 5-day event. It's a bunch of free open programming, and it'll be all at Union Hall. Oh, speaking of Union Hall, about 30,000 people have come through the doors since we've been open for about 2 years. I wonder where those people went before this. Where was that galvanizing place? It probably was in pockets and places, but we like to think that we're engaging more people through having that front door to innovation right there on Vine Street. So a couple things that just want to end with from a highlight standpoint. I had the pleasure of joining Steve Case, the founder of AOL, and he runs a VC group called Revolution, this event called Rise of the Rest. What Steve and their thesis is that not all of these investments need to go to these coastal ecosystems. It's about 86% of all venture capital dollars are concentrated in one of 3 states: New York, California, and Massachusetts. That leaves the rest of the country out. So Cincinnati was one of the first tours, or one of the first stops on his bus tour about 3 years ago. We want to have him back again. There's some talk that he may be coming back this fall. But this, the Rise of the Rest was 130 other ecosystem builders that we look to benchmark off of, to steal from and copy from. And I was proud that we weren't too far off from a lot of these other ecosystems. I was proud that we were further ahead than a lot. No one has figured this out. There is no panacea. No one's got all the colors of the Rubik's Cube together, but we're close and we're getting there. Hillman Accelerator was announced just about 3 days ago. This was a culmination of a lot of effort from emphasis from the state of Ohio, who encouraged all of us in this entrepreneurial signature program. The drivers of that ESP are Cincy Tech, Cintrifuse, and the Brandery, who banded together and really this is the culmination of that. It will be a minority-focused accelerator. They're going to be setting up shop at the Freedom Center. I believe it starts in June.
UC was also involved in Dale's.
Great. The University of Cincinnati is a key part of that ESP as well. But it's June in the Freedom Center, and then I think they're going to have a 4-month program graduating in October, but very focused on women and ethnic minorities. This is a big stride forward for our ecosystem. And along those lines, this is another thing that we're proud of, that these are 2 African-American startup founders who were just announced to 2 boards of trustees of state institutions. So that's Rodney Williams on the left, the CEO of Listener, who was appointed to the University of Cincinnati Board of Trustees, and Rod Robinson on the right, the CEO of Connexus, who was appointed to the Miami University Board of Trustees. This is significant. It's significant. What it says is that not just from a minority standpoint, let's put that aside, that's very important, but how entrepreneurship is viewed in this region. And you think back, you don't have to dial too far back, but this city was founded by entrepreneurs. This, Procter, Gamble, Kroger, those are real people, those are real names. We just kind of use them as brand names now, but those are real people. That's what makes me proud about this ecosystem, is there's still an emphasis on that, of business builders. And then you look at the strides of where we're taking as an ecosystem on diversity and inclusion, and this is a special time in Cincinnati. But we're just getting started. Like I said, there's a couple things that I really want to point your attention or bring your attention to that are happening. Tidal is an arts and tech hackathon that's happening this evening at Union Hall. It's a partnership with ArtsWave is really behind it. But the editor-in-chief of Vibe magazine is going to give the keynote tonight, so that's a significant deal. Ocean's Demo Day is next week, Thursday at the Crossroads in Clifton. Some major funding announcements are going to be coming out in the next couple weeks, 6 months. There's a launchpad, Israeli launchpad, where we partnered with some big co's here in town to bring some Israeli tech here for a showcase. That's going to be May 16th in Union Hall. Innovation Exchange, that's IX Cincy, it's another event, a signature event. We're going to have that June 22nd, bringing in a speaker who is well-versed in corporate innovation. His name is Jeremiah Aouyang, if anybody is following him. He's a great guy. We're talking about having a hacking heroin, like a hackathon, partnering with the city, and some things that we're doing with St. Elizabeth and some of the other healthcare ecosystem partners throughout. And then there's Startup Cincy Week, October 9th through 13th. So just mark that on your calendar, but there's always something going on. Hopefully you guys are involved in the conversation. You can follow us, pretty active on social media, hashtag Startup Cincy. There's also a Twitter handle, Startup Cincy. And Cintrifuse is very active, but I just wanted to encourage everybody to get plugged in and really join the community and stay connected with everything that's going on. I'll leave you with this. This is the manifesto, as it were, of Startup Cincy. We're the driving force behind our region's new economy, built by a community of innovators, makers, founders, and disruptors. Startup Cincy is our rallying cry, an ecosystem for those that love the hustle, hard work, passion, and dedication it takes to transform an idea into reality.